Hello. Welcome to the Krastorio 2 Megabase tour. This is a culmination of a Let's Play series that I did in a sort of a time-lapse format where I did some stuff off-stream and then gave updates twice a week as to how the base was progressing and what was working, what was not working, etc. So if you've watched all of that, there's not much new in here at all, to be honest with you. But if you watch this and you want to see all the steps that we make to get this far, how to build a Krastorio 2 Megabase from scratch, then I will link the playlist in the description. In the description you will also find the save file for this Megabase, so if you want to download it and have a look around yourself, that's there. And you will also find a link down there to my Ko-fi page. So if you like the base, if you download the base and you like it, or if you learn something, or if you just generally want to say thank you to me, you can. But please don't feel pressured to do that. Okay. The entire map looks like this, currently. You can see this absolutely tanks the UPS. Biter expansion is currently on. I turned it on with a command line prompt after I felt comfortable doing so, but I didn't play the main game with expansion on, so there's a disclaimer for you. I mostly turned expansion on after I built the artillery wall. At one point there was a pollution filter wall, and the pollution filter wall just didn't cope, so I tore it down and replaced it with a laser turret wall, but then, because expansion wasn't on, it didn't really achieve anything anyway. So I turned expansion on, just to see what the laser artillery turret wall and a regular turret wall would do. It was just a curiosity more than anything. Here's the entire pollution cloud. The mods I have been using are Resource Monitor, Advanced Artillery Remotes, which is a quality of life mod that lets you just bulk target far away locations, apropos revealing the map. Copy recipe to chest, which was integral into building the mall. Factorio, which adds coloured concrete and various other things, including more signals, which is quite nice. Even distribution, as we know. Extra zoom. Factorio library. FNEI, just to bring up, this is my preferred recipe book mod. GUI Unify, which just pretties everything up. Krastorio 2 assets, obviously. Mining Patch Planner. Smarter Pasting, again, which was useful for building the mall. Power Grid Comb for aesthetics. Pump, which is like Mining Patch Planner, but for oil, and Krastorio also adds mineral water patches. Squeak Through, of course. Text Plates. Bottleneck Light. More text plates. Ghost on Water, which is a quality of life mod for functionality they're going to add in 2.0 anyway. Krastorio 2, of course. Milestones, modular inserter, rate calculator, ultimate research queue. Ultimate research queue just makes the research queue look like this instead and lets you queue up things and see how long they're going to take and stuff. So, mostly quality of life stuff. Played Krastorio 2 on default settings. Didn't change anything. Yeah, so no exoskeletons in Spidertrons, no the rebalanced fuels and stuff like that. Anyway. The basic concept for this was that I just wanted to do a Krastorio 2 playthrough, because it'd been a long time since I'd done a Krastorio 2 playthrough. Most of my Factorio playthroughs in the last 6 months had just been vanilla, interesting things that I wanted to try and stuff. So I thought before Space Age comes out, I would do a Krastorio 2 playthrough and do some video content for it as well. What I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to quickly load a previous version of the save file that doesn't have all the map generation revealed and all of the biters and stuff. It's just so that this artillery thing is not constantly going off, and just so every time I zoom out it doesn't tank the UPS. So please bear with me for a second. Okay, that's better. you can see what I was trying to do here with the pollution filters. It doesn't really work in the long run. So this was the last save file I made just before I used the command line to turn expansion back on, and just before I tore the pollution filter wall down to change it for artillery and stuff like that. Okay, as you can see here, I'm actually building the artillery as we speak. So, up to this point, let's have a quick look at the production charts. 10 hours, I believe, was all good. Yeah, there we go. 10 hours, production tech cards, 5.4 thousand. Nice straight line. Going back 50 hours. 15 hours, about 15 hours ago on this so far from when I turned the entire base on. The most recent episode of the Let's Play, episode 25, deals with me turning the base on for the first time and the issues that arise from that, but as you can see, pretty smooth, pretty smooth. The base is fed in a variety of ways. The way we tackled this was we built the starter base. That got us up to about rocket tech. Then we used the rocket, all the tech up to rockets to build the grid sections here. These modular grid sections. I used modular grid sections all the way up to 1,000 science per minute. I did a lot of research during that period, 1,000 science per minute, getting mining productivity up, robot worker speed up, various things like that. And then tore down the starter base, redesigned them all, and then built everything we would need for 5,400 science per minute. The science cards are processed in two separate Singularity lab areas. This is why I've got extra zoom installed, by the way. Look at that, that's nice, isn't it? Good mod, good mod. Just wish it applied to map view as well. Singularity labs. This is the text plate mod and stuff. I just parried this up. There are two sections of Singularity labs that both process 2,700 cards per minute. Belt weaving is used. Trigger warning, belt weaving is used. I'll go into detail about this in the Let's Play. I was pretty staunchly against belt weaving. In vanilla especially. But in Krastorio, given that there are higher tiers of belts, and the belts have very large underground length, and how many modules and beacons you can squeeze around one machine, using belt weaving is pretty much required to get the most out of these designs. Especially if you want to make them look nice like this, like they do. So yes, each one of these supplies 2,700 cards per minute. A train system, and I'll talk about the train system later. And so the outskirts of the base are where the very large designs have happened, designs that just couldn't possibly fit into grid section. And this is one of the design philosophies I wanted to talk about. I often see people, especially when they get into Megabase territory, is they go, I'm going to do city blocks, I'm going to do grid sections, etc. And that's fine. I'm not saying that they're bad. But I think a lot of people end up getting stuck, they end up giving up because they restrict themselves to a grid section and they don't ever think, do I absolutely have to build this in the grid sections, in the city blocks? So when I finished 1,000 science per minute and I started doing calculations for 5,400, especially in Krastorio, it became quickly apparent that we would need an absurd amount of low density structures, just because of how the mod is balanced. So we currently make 46,000 low density structures a minute. Consumption is up and down depending on train transport, etc. But you know, like, we've been doing that consistently since we first turned the base on in earnest 15 hours ago. And that's a lot. 46,000 low density structures. They take 20 seconds each to craft. So if you were to do your designs and every single one had to fit into a grid section, and you just think, okay, well, I'll design one, and even if it makes only 1,000, that's fine, I can just copy and paste that around. When you then do the maths and go, oh, I would need 46 different versions of this, very quickly becomes unfeasible. So you have to do, in my opinion, you have to just do designs like this. You have to do self-contained, large modules of builds. So this makes 11,490 low density structures a minute, and even then we would need 4 of these. And I'll go into more detail about how this works. So this is why the base looks like how it does. So it has some things that are in grid sections, because they were either designed early or they're not big enough to warrant being outside the base. So for example here, this is where we do our rare metal processing. But this is enough for rare metals, especially because in some builds I've decided to do the rare metals on site, and I'll talk about that a bit more later. And then when the numbers for something just are far too large, so Mercian plates, I'll just talk about it now. So Mercian plates, for example, they need rare metals in them. So you have to then pick and choose which things you're going to ship in and which things you're going to make on site. So with the mechanics given to you in Krastorio, you can just have one train that brings in matter cubes and through various processes output plates, Immersium plates on the end, which is extremely helpful. And this is why matter in Krastorio 2 is so important. There's some people that don't like the matter mechanic, they think it's strange, it boils the game down to too much, it makes everything the same. And I understand those complaints, I do. But it's the actual, when you look at the numbers behind matter, there's no way, personally, I would have been able to manage this without using the matter mechanic and using it to its fullest extent. Somebody can, of course they can, but personally, I cannot. So given the high levels of mining productivity that we had to have, it takes us about... There's no energy beacons in these miners. It takes us about 14 miners to do a full purple belt. And a purple belt is 90 items per minute. So then we turn that iron ore directly into liquid matter, and then that liquid matter goes... What is this pump doing? Nothing. Wow. Yeah, so there's lots of mistakes as well. I should say that. I don't claim this base is perfect, but once I hit the 10-hour mark and all the science was ticking over nicely, there are some mistakes. Of course there are some mistakes. Lots of copy and pasting happened. So yeah, I don't pretend to be the best. So the liquid matter comes out, and then obviously liquid throughput is so much faster and more efficient than things you can fit on a belt. Like, that should be obvious, right? Like, fluid just moves faster. You're limited by pump speed and pipe throughput and stuff, but those numbers are so much higher. So then when you turn that, you can turn 1,000 of that matter into one matter cube, and then you can turn that matter cube back into the matter, and then turn that matter back into the iron. So it doesn't sound on the surface that it achieves you very much, right? Like, what's the difference between doing this and just putting the iron ore in a train and moving that to where you need it? But it comes down to how often your trains would then have to go around. So the way the matter is working in this base is I have a few trains, I have 17 matter stations, I have a few trains. The stations are only turned on when there is more than 100,000 matter in the tanks, and then a train comes and picks that up and turns that into matter cubes somewhere. So this makes 700 matter a second. Well, it did, it doesn't anymore because not all the belts are full. But with mining productivity you can see that this is going to last a long time. And if I bring my resource monitor mod up as well to show you, we don't even have a huge amount of that. So then the matter goes to these plants, they're turned into matter cubes. This is expensive in terms of energy requirements, but it's not, you know, other than that it's fine. the matter cubes go into a train, and the train waits around for a station to say, I'm running low on matter cubes. So even in the low density structure area, for example, we have 1, 2, 3 matter plants turning those matter cubes back into matter. And so if I do this, and probably 1.7 matter cubes per second this uses, and I think that's overscaled as well by a touch. So if you consider, you take that ore, you turn it into the matter, you turn that matter into the cubes go into a train, they stack to 200. Each one of those 200 cubes is 1,000 matter, each of that 1,000 matter is like 8,000 iron ore. You can quickly see how much resource you can ship around the base and how quickly you can do that. And that really ultimately in any base, for any mod, is your limiting factor. You can only build as fast as you can move things around the base. And you can fudge those numbers by having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 builds that do the same thing, but obviously they only run 1/5 of the time, 1/6 of the time, so you're still then beholden to just how quickly you can produce and move items around the base. So the matter mechanic sort of removes that. It removes the moving items around the base aspect of it. So then it's just up to you to make the items fast enough to cope. And so we use that in a lot of places. So if I go back to immersion plates, for example, let me turn my tags on so you can see. If we go back to immersion plates, for example, if we had to bring in the raw imersite and crush that into powder, bring in some stone, do the electrolysis on the stone, or even worse still, bring in the hydrogen chloride directly, bring in the rare metals, enrich the rare metals. If we had to do all of that on site, we would just... this would use so much. That's the wrong thing. 556 raw rare metals a second in, you know, 4 wagons a minute. Doing it like this just gives you so much more throughput, and it removes that need for trains. A lot of trains, you know. You just bring in the matter cubes. And so then this was my design philosophy with things. I would start at the end. I would say I want about... I need this much based on... oh, I should say a huge thank you was factoriolab.github.io, which is my off-site Factorio calculator. Extremely good. Got Factorio, got lots of popular Factorio mods on there, very configurable, lets you do exactly what you want. It's also got Dyson Sphere and Satisfactory and things on there as well, so I'll link that in the description. That's a very good website. Yeah, so I would look at the Factorio calculator. I would say I need this many imersite plates a second, a minute. Is that possible in one build? Yes/no. If it's not possible in one, okay, we'll split it in half. Maybe we can do it over 2, maybe we need to do it over 4, whatever. And then I would work backwards. So I'd then, you know, split that into like 8, or I would say, well, let's get one belt out and see what one belt means in terms of resources. So I then would go, okay, well, this is a good amount of imersite plates, you know, or I would limit my input to a belt. I'd say, well, I don't really want to do more than one belt of rare metals in, so how many imersite plates can we make with one belt of rare metals? And then work backwards from there, right? How do I make that much rare metal? What do I need for that? How do I make that much enriched rare metal? What do I need for that? Etc. So there are some builds where I do bring in the raw resources, and that's because the throughput of the train is less important. There are a few where it's questionable. Electronic components into what is this? Red circuits, for example. Maybe should have tried to do the electronic components on site, because I think this uses 4 belts of electronic components. But hey ho, it works. We make the green circuits on site at least. lithium batteries, we bring in the lithium, bring in the iron. Then you also need to bring in, for some matter processes, these charge matter stabilizers. So some turning matter into items processes need some of these, and they take the energy from them and get the item out, and they give you 99% of the time they give you one back. So a lot of builds have this, where they come out, they're recharged, they go back in, and then it's a simple priority splitter to just reuse these that are in the system already. A little buffer chest here that just helps with... Sometimes there are situations where this doesn't need to do anything anymore, the station's full for whatever reason. So then this belt doesn't ever move, so then this belt, if this buffer wasn't here, this belt would just be backed up, and then this sort of cascades down. This one's full so it can't output, so then this one starts charging, this one gets full so it can't output, and then it goes all the way to the bottom, and then eventually this just backs up. So you'll see this in a lot of the builds. You'll also see, pretty randomly sometimes, whether I decide to enrich the iron, copper, rare metals if they're used in a build. It mostly comes down to how big that build would be without the enrichment. So these batteries only need copper, lithium, sulfur, sulfuric acid, for example. So I didn't think it was too much of a hassle to just enrich the iron, enrich the copper. This is one of the few examples where the Factorio has a water fill mod. I used a different water fill mod, but Factorio has its own water fill capability. This is one of the few examples where I just used the water fill mod willy-nilly. In a lot of places around the base I've tried to be good. I've tried to use water fill where either landfill exists, or I've just obviously done a landfill around it. So, or sometimes I try to get cute with it and do, you know, things like this, to varying degrees of success, I suppose. I'm not going to go too much into every individual build, as I say, like the Let's Play format pretty much covered that. I just want to go through high-level things here. So this, yeah, as I say, like this, that's the matter. The other benefit of doing all of your builds like this, I should say, is that they don't need belt balancing at any point until the very, 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 very end. You design one column, and the fluid, the fluid of matter self-balances. The fluid just flows to where it's needed. So as long as the fluid is getting into these machines okay, it just sort of balances itself. And then I've only got balances here in some cases where the number of belts out don't match the number of belts going into warehouses. So there are some builds where I just don't have a balancer at all. So my standalone rare metal thing here is 4 high, so there's 4 warehouses, so just don't ever have a balancer. Just don't need one. Why would you need one? Okay, cool. The other thing with matter in Krastorio is you can get matter from wood. So there are a few... I just toyed with it at the end because I was a bit worried about matter throughput. You do need a lot of matter even in this system. Thankfully we got there, just about got there, but I didn't want to not try and use the greenhouse system at all. So there's a couple of different builds around the base here. This one outputs a purple belt of wood and turns that wood into matter, using beacons and modules to get the greenhouses to go as fast as feasibly possible. Expensive. Expensive in terms of modules. Modules are very cheap in Krastorio, relatively cheap. But still, these kinds of builds, they do add up. So this has 1,400 speed beacons in, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's slightly less important in Krastorio that that is a high number. But when you think, alright, well let's really go for this, you know, and you do something like this, then you're talking about large numbers of modules. So there's 2 of these greenhouse systems with beacons and modules, but of course you don't need to beacon and module things, but this is without it. These just have energy beacons in, just to energy modules in, just to be a contrast to the other ones, just to see exactly what the difference would be. So this footprint outputs 4 belts of wood, and that is, you know, what would you say that is? A third of the size of this big thing here, which outputs how many belts of wood? 40. So, you know, basically it just comes down to space and what your module backlog is like. Okay, how is this all powered? Very simply, it's powered by antimatter reactors. These are extremely strong. Again, you bring matter in, you charge fuel cells with it. These fuel cells you always get back. So you just seed the system with, so there's 20 of these in a row. So I just put 40 fuel cells into the system, give or take. There's probably more here. Why are there so many? And then I've just done some simple circuit additions here to just only load. So you put 1 in the chest, and then you only put a fresh 1 in the reactor when this arm moves the empty one out. So this just stops you from having like 200 fuel cells in this tiny section here, which is not, you know, it's not the end of the world to have that, but it's slightly more efficient to do it like this. Each one of these produces 3 gigawatts. They are perfectly efficient. They only produce as much energy as is needed in the base. They're not like nuclear reactors that just work at speed. Yeah. So there's 1, 2, 3 of these around the base, I believe. Power is currently... Oh, sorry. This is very up and down. I don't know why that number is so up and down. It's probably just as arms are... Yeah, there we go. It's probably... Reactors were probably just going through a phase of emptying. There we go. 490 gigawatts max capacity. Currently about 300 gigawatts. There is 1 accumulator bank down here, just in case. That is set up to a speaker that tells me if this is discharging, if it ever goes below 90%, which I know is very high. But I want to know when these are basically just being used for real, rather than just a minor fluctuation every now and then, just so I can think about it. This has never happened. This has just never ever happened. These accumulators that have never done anything. But you know, belts and braces, am I right? Trains. How do the trains work? Trains work very simply. All my trains are 4-1 trains. Throughput maybe would have been less of a problem if I'd have done 1-8 trains, or 2-8 trains, or 1-8-1 trains, or whatever, but these are all just 4-1 trains. I set myself that limitation at the beginning. I just thought, let's just do 4-1 trains. Stack sizes in Krastorio are a bit different. It gives you a bit more wiggle room to do this. Every loading station has 1 train, often 2 trains, to be fair. So let's look at processing units, for example. This has 2 trains at the loading station, and the loading station is just simply called what the item is. And then every unloading station is called that, and then with an assembly machine next to it to indicate that that is going to an assembly machine. Not my finest work, I have to say. The warehouse is linked to a combinator system. This constant combinator, you set this to the stack size of the item, This arithmetic combinator then works out how much a full train would be based on that stack size. So you just have one combinator at the very beginning to just times the input signal by how many slots all your wagons would have, so 160. Obviously I could have just times this by another constant that comes in, but sometimes you want to change this, sometimes, and I'll show you that with the matter ones. But most of these, 99% of these, are set to 160 because that's how many slots you would get in a 4-1 train. This also gives you wiggle room to change this should you then update something or install a mod that lets you change the stack or the wagon sizes of trains or whatever. Then, where was I? Processing units. Processing units at something or other. This decider combinator just turns what is being read in the warehouse to a generic signal, which I've just made C for cargo, just so that then this decider combinator is the same everywhere. If C for cargo is less than T for train load, output 1. And then that just goes to the station. So then the train limit is set to 1 when the amount in a warehouse is less than 1 full train's worth. Each one of these also has a programmable speaker attached to it so that I can get global alerts for things that may be not working or throughput that needs improving. This was very helpful. I'm spending a lot of time going into the chart and going, oh, how's science doing? Oh no. Not in the big base, but in the 1,000 science per minute base. This is in between those two steps I implemented this. Is science keeping up at 1,000? No. Which one is failing? Space. Why is space failing? Oh, rocket control units are failing. Why are rocket control units failing? Oh, processing units are failing. You know, whereas now I just get a little pop-ups here that say, this train station is empty. And it's much easier to troubleshoot things like that. I have the same system at the science labs, except 5,400 is the limit for the speaker, and I just get a slightly different coloured alert. So currently we're getting an alert, this train station is empty, low density structures, what's going on, click the station, train is on its way. This is empty for a bit longer than I would like, and then the next step is usually to look at the output of that and go, well, there's 36,000 energy control units in the warehouse, there's a train there waiting to go to the next station that tells it it's needed. I don't mind. Therefore, I'm not too worried about this. And here's the train now, in fact. So this is fine. It's not ideal, of course. That does mean that I'm pretty much just going to always get a low density structure alert. It may have also just been that even though there's a low density structure build here, for whatever reason, it may have just pulled a train in from this one all the way down here. So it knew it needed to arrive, it just didn't arrive in good enough time. And you do things like check that your combinators are calling in the train at the right time. So here we go. The second one came much quicker, so you know, this is fine. And that's the base, basically. So we have 4 of these extremely large low density structure builds. This is the one I tackled first, just because I knew this would be the biggest headache. I was making sulfuric acid and shipping it in via train, and then eventually I did this black box sulfuric acid build. So this brings matter cubes in and gets you sulfuric acid out. You just need to bring in water from somewhere. And this is insanely helpful. Sulfuric acid goes into a lot of things in Krastorio too. A lot of important things. Lithium sulfur batteries, processing units. You need it in the ore enrichment process. Imosite crystals. It goes though. So being able to make it on site is very helpful. So this little black box build, I just have this in my blueprint book and just pop this down in places that it can keep up with. There are some places that this is the irony, is that in places that need more than 30,000 sulfur a minute, I can't use this, so I have to bring it in via train. But obviously bringing it in via train at that point is a lot of trains. So there are 2 of these, and I tend to just build these near where the big sulfuric acid drinkers are. But I've not been 100% sensible with that. But fluid throughput is so fast that you just have 3 or 4 trains here waiting. You know, this train will load in about 1 second. There you go. Destination full anyway, so it's fine. I ummed for a long time about loading the train and then having it wait versus having an empty train waiting. So, yes, of course, this train doesn't have anywhere to go, so why is it standing here doing nothing? It could be waiting somewhere, and then these trains could load, and then this train could go from a stacker on this side of the train station. I maybe incorrectly decided in the end that it made no difference, because in this system the train can go directly to the station where it's needed from here. If it has to go to a stacker first, regardless of whether it needs to go to that stacker or whether it's being called straight away, you still have that dead time of it going from here to a stacker where it waits and then being sent on. This system, the train just leaves straight away. I mean, it sounds wrong, I think, especially when you're talking about something like this that needs to be loaded via arms. You can load the wagons with Krastorio loaders, but my testing showed that this was quite intensive on UPS. And as you can see, as long as we don't have the artillery and we zoom out of the map too much and turn on the pollution, we are getting a pretty consistent 60 UPS. The zooming out mod takes some. I've got a lot of intensive mods as well, I think. I think if I got rid of resource monitor and bottleneck and maybe some other things, I don't know, we would be okay. But yeah, I mean 60 frames per second. So yeah, that's the base, really. Let me get my milestones up. Obviously Krastorio has lots of tech cards that become obsolete. You don't even need to make 10,000 basic tech cards, 100,000 automation tech cards to finish the tech tree, so that is weird. And yeah, biters are off for the most part. I abused the anti-biter virus capsules pretty heavily, as you see in the playthrough. I just spent some time throwing them around, and then whenever I get a bit scared about biters, I throw them around. Okay, yeah, so that's basically the base. It's a very organic style base. It grew very naturally from what was needed, what I designed. And that's really what I wanted. I you know, like, I didn't want to do a purely grid section based base, and I don't think that it's really viable for these kinds of numbers, just because of the sheer size of some of the builds that you need. If you want to make low density structures this way, where you make the plastic on site, you make the copper on site, you make the steel on site. If you don't do that, if you just ship these things in via a train, your train throughput needs to be so high, etc, you know, so we don't ever mine rare metals now, so we don't need to worry about the chlorine. We do mine uranium, but because getting uranium from matter is quite expensive, given the sulfuric acid production of the base anyway, this wasn't too bad. Uranium processing is very simple. Where is it? Here's one. You get stone and iron as a byproduct in Krastorio for processing uranium, but you just turn that into matter. You turn that matter back into raw uranium. You reprocess it. These are nuclear trains. They run on nuclear fuel. There is a mechanic in Krastorio for equipment grids for trains and things. I didn't really use that very much. I only used that in one place, and that was the blank tech card trains, because I noticed there was a bit of a problem with throughput of these. So I wanted these to just get out the gate a bit faster, even given the huge amount of blank tech cards that we make. And this is a good example of one where I didn't enrich the ores just because blank tech cards are so cheap, and it would fit nicely in a grid section without the enrichment process. So this problem's fixed, but these have got, I can't show you because I'm too far away. These have got engine units in which increase the acceleration. They don't increase the max speed. If you could increase the max speed of vehicles using the equipment grid, then I would definitely do that, but whatever. Yeah, so uranium processing is fairly simple. I had Covarex running at one point. It was huge overkill. Uranium goes into purple tech. So just by processing the uranium 238, you're going to get more than enough 235, and you can see that here. So periodically I upgrade the warehouse for the 235 into a logistics warehouse, get it all in via bots, and then put it back, just so that the bots aren't always running around. The trains are fueled by bots, and that is more viable in Krastorio because these nuclear fuel cells last so long that just having bots flying around every now and then to fill up a chest with 1 or 2 fuel cells, you know, you can see, like, it doesn't, you can see that all of the trains flying around, there's barely any bots moving around. They're moving around the mall, of course, but this is because this is the point in the save where I'm still making artillery shells for changing the wall over, which was of questionable efficacy in the end, but it was something I wanted to do. I'd never done it before. I'm not a massive fan of the biters in the game generally, so doing a artillery wall, using artillery shells to reveal the map and things, it's not really anything I'd played with before, so I wanted to at least just do it while I was in a position to do it. That's mostly it, to be honest with you. I didn't think I would make it. I honestly, when I started the Let's Play and I said 1,000 science, I thought I'd stop there, and then I still felt like carrying on. And I foolishly out loud said 5,400 science per minute, because that is more than my previous base tour video was doing. And it's also the target I set for myself in the reverse Megabase, which I bailed on halfway through. So this was sort of like a vindication for me, really, in the end, that it was possible. I could do it. I could do it at 60 FPS, and I could finish it before Space Age came out. And that's really everything I wanted to achieve. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy. I'm especially happy that the cards on the chart after the initial half an hour here of, oh, this isn't quite right, oh, that's not quite right, it was, you know, this is the dream, isn't it? This nice perfect flat line of consumption over 10 hours in the chart, that is the dream. So I'm pretty happy, I'm pretty proud. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this self-indulgent base tour. As I say, lots of stuff down in the description below, links to the save file, links to the calculator, and yeah, my Ko-fi will be there as well. So if this was of interest to you and you want to buy me a coffee as a little thumbs up, I would greatly appreciate that. But again, don't feel any pressure at all to do that. I do this for fun, I do this for a little hobby, because I don't like leaving the house or talking to people. So yeah, this isn't my livelihood or anything. See you on Space Age, I guess. If you want to check out the Let's Play I did for this, it's it's extremely likely that will follow the same format for Space Age, so I'm not going to do a full Let's Play. Here's half an hour of me playing, because that would be extremely boring. I'm quite slow, quite stupid, so I tend to just spend more time than is necessary designing something. So I'd rather just go, I'm going to design this, and then I'll show you it, and then I'll talk about the design, rather than designing it in front of you. That would be extremely laborious and tedious for everybody involved. That does mean that there'll probably be a little bit of a lag between when the game comes out and videos that I've made, but that's also fine, right? So yeah, if you want to check out the Let's Play for this, getting ready for Space Age, that's the kind of the thing you can expect. Alright, I won't take any more of your time. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who watched the Let's Play. Thank you for everyone who commented, liked, subscribed. Shout out to the Krastorio 2 Discord. And that's probably it. Yes, thank you so much. Bye bye.